The power of people coming together, just as we see here tonight. The power of an idea, the power of hope, vision, and action. I was on a flight. I was going down to Florida. I was going to meet some friends who were doing some political things, and I jumped on the airplane and we took off, and I realized that I'd left the briefcase and all the work I was going to read back in my office. So I read everything in the seat pocket in front of me except how to throw up. I know how to do that. And I began speaking to this guy sitting beside me. His name is Peter Douglas. Peter Douglas from London, Ontario. And he was telling me his story and what he did for a living. And it turned out he worked for the UN through the auspices of UNICEF. And his job was to work with street kids. Kids on the streets of a place called Khartoum, the capital of Sudan. There were some 10,000 children on the street. Kids had come from many, many miles, some riding boxcars to get to the street. Famine and civil war caused these kids to be on the street. He told me they had a slogan that translates into English, "My mother, the street," because everything they knew came from the street. Peter went on to tell me, this is 1985, Peter went on to tell me that the World Health Organization was testing kids for serious diseases. It turned out 23% were HIV positive. Kids were dying of AIDS. My mother, the street. No information getting to them. Peter went on to tell me that he was looking for something for the kids to entertain them, and he went to the US Embassy one day and he found an old Tom and Jerry cartoon. And he brought it back to the shelter. There were a dozen kids or so, and they showed it on the wall. The kids didn't speak English, but they were mesmerized by the animation. And they played it over and over, and the next night 100 kids, and the next night 1,000 kids showed up, and they wore out the film. The idea that came to us on the airplane, My Mother, the Street, the idea was, why don't we create an animated film, capture kids' attention, and deliver a health message about protecting themselves. We loved the idea, and we talked about it some more, and before long we thought about animation. See, geez, if you had animation, you could have every language in the world. And I found myself walking up and down the beach in Florida saying, how am I going to make a film? To make a short one out of a long one, we created Street Kids International. Peter came back to Toronto, and we made a film. It's an arduous process of making that film. It was 23 minutes long. It was before computer animation and coloring, so every cell had to be hand-drawn and hand-colored. We had to be very, very careful with the nuance of that film. To make a long story out of a short one, or a short one out of a long one, we made that film, and we stayed in touch with World Health Organization. And one day the phone rang, and it was Jonathan Mann, who headed up the AIDS Secretariat in Geneva, and said, listen, we're having a conference in a month. Can you bring the film? It wasn't ready, but we worked night and day, and we got it ready, and we took off. We went to Geneva. And on the way over to Geneva, we talked about how we might present the film. You see, when you present an educational film, you need to talk about pedagogy and research and data and all that stuff. And we decided we weren't educators, we were filmmakers, and we just let the film speak for itself. And that's what we did. We turned off the light. 23 minutes later, the lights came up, and you could hear a pin drop. And Jonathan Mann got up at the back of the table. So that film was a benchmark for teaching kids about serious subjects for the 21st century. They targeted 40 million kids to see that film. 2 guys met on an airplane. 2 guys had an idea. Kids lived because they saw a film. Don't tell me you can't change the world. Don't tell me you can't make a difference. You can change the world. Hope, vision, action. A family here in Ottawa, some 52 years ago, got together and they brought in a kid from the street. He needed a lot of help. And they brought him in and they helped him. And they said, geez, there must be some other kids. And out of that has grown what we're all here to celebrate tonight, the FSB. Hope, vision, action. We can change the world. Hope, vision, action. We change our community, we change our country, we change the world. Our common mission, ladies and gentlemen, is that when each and every one of us passes away, we need to know that our journey made a difference. Every one of us has made a contribution, and the world is a better place because we've been here. This is a common mission of all of us. And we see that tonight with this room filled to capacity of people from Ottawa coming together to support such a great cause. These folks do such great work. These folks, day after day, are there for our kids. Kids that are struggling, kids that were just like me. There were lots of times that people tried to help me, and I wasn't ready to be helped. And I'm sure there's lots of time that these kids are trying, that the message is given to these kids, and they're not ready yet. But who knows when they will be? So day after day, we need to keep the doors open. We need to be there for them. We need to be always attuned to their needs. Because every once in a while, a kid stands on the corner, just like I did, says, die or change. Die or change. And because the efforts of folks like these, people choose to live.